Hey guys, we're going to start the third chapter of Matilda. Today it's called The Hat and the Super Glue. So in the picture, Matilda is getting a hat with a cane. What is she going to do with it? The following morning, just before Father left for his beastly second car garage, Matilda slipped into the cloakroom and got a hold of a hat he wore every day to work. She had to stand on her toes and reach as high as she could with a walking stick in order to hook the hat off the peg, and even then, she only just made it. The hat itself was a flat-top pork pie jobs with a jay's feather stuck in the hat band, and Mr. Wormwood was very proud of it. A jay's feather is a blue jay's feather. He thought it gave him a rakish, daring look, especially when he wore it at an angle with a loud checker jacket and a green tie. Matilda, holding the hat in one hand and a thin tube of super glue in the other, proceeded to squeeze a line of glue very neatly around the inside rim of the hat. Then she carefully hooked the hat back on the peg with the walking stick. She timed this operation very carefully, applying the glue just as her father was getting up from the breakfast table. Mr. Wormwood didn't notice anything when he put the hat on, but when he had arrived in the garage, he couldn't get it off. The super glue was very powerful stuff, so powerful that it will take your skin off if you pull too hard. Mr. Wormwood didn't want to be scalped, so he had to keep the hat on his head for the whole day. Even when putting sawdust in the gearboxes and fiddling with the mileages of the cars with his electric drill, in an effort to save face, he adopted a casual attitude, hoping that his staff would think that he actually meant to keep his hat on all day, just for the heck of it, like gangsters do in the film. What is the mom trying to do in this picture? When he got home that evening, he still couldn't get the hat off. "Don't be silly," his wife said. "Come here, I'll take it off for you." She gave the hat a sharp yank. Mr. Wormwood let out a yell and rattled the window panes. "Ow!" he screamed. "Don't do that. Let go. You'll take off half the skin of my forehead." Matilda, nestled in her usual chair, was watching this performance over the rim of her book with some interest, just like this. "What's the matter, Daddy?" she said. "Has your head suddenly swollen or something?" The father glared at his daughter with deep suspicion, but said nothing. How could he? Mrs. Wormwood said to him, "It must be super glue. It couldn't be anything else. That'll teach you to go playing around with the nasty stuff like that. I expect you were trying to stick another feather in your hat." "I haven't touched the flaming stuff," Mr. Wormwood shouted. He turned and looked again at Matilda, who looked back at him with large, innocent brown eyes. Mrs. Wormwood said to him, "You should read the label on the tube before you start messing around with dangerous products. Always follow the instructions on the labels." "And what heaven's name are you talking about?" Mr. Wormwood shouted, clutching the brim of his hat as if trying to stop anyone from pulling it off again. "You think I'm so stupid that I'd glue anything to my head on purpose?" There's Matilda in the chair. Matilda said, "There's a boy down the road who's got some super glue on his finger without knowing, and then put his finger in his nose." Mr. Wormwood jumped. "What happened to him?" he spluttered. "The finger got stuck inside his nose," Matilda said, "and he had to go around like that for a week, and people kept saying to him, 'Stop picking your nose,' and he couldn't do anything about it, and he looked like an awful fool." "Serve him right," said Mrs. Wormwood. He shouldn't have put his finger up there in the first place. It's a nasty habit. All children had super glue put on their fingers. They'd stop doing that." Matilda said, "Grown-ups do it, Mummy. I saw you doing it yesterday in the kitchen." "That's quite enough from you," Mrs. Wormwood said, turning pink. Mr. Wormwood had to keep his hat on through supper. In front of the television, he looked ridiculous, and he stayed very silent. He went up to bed and tried again to get the thing off, and so did his wife, but it wouldn't budge. "How am I going to have a shower?" he demanded. "You'll just have to do it without it. You'll just have to do without it, won't you?" he told his wife, and later on, she had watched her skinny little husband sulking around in the bedroom in his purple-striped pajamas with his pork pie hat on his head, and she thought how stupid he looked. Hardly the kind of man a wife dreams about, she told herself. So this is the little boy who got his finger in his nose, and there's Mr. Wormwood with his pajamas and his hat. Mr. Wormwood discovered the worst thing about having a permanent hat on his head was having to sleep with it. It was impossible to lie comfortably on a pillow. Now do stop fussing around, his wife said to him after he had been tossing and turning for about an hour. I expect it will be loose by the morning and it will slip off easily. But it wasn't loose by the morning and it wouldn't slip off. So Mrs. Wormwood took a pair of scissors and cut the thing off his head bit by bit. First the top, then the brim, where the inner was in the back, and then chopped his hair right off his head, right to his skin, and it finished with a bald white ring around his head, like someone had stuck a band directly on his bare skin. There remained a whole lot of small patches of brown leathery stuff with no amount of washing would get off. At breakfast, Matilda said to him, "You must try to get those bits off your forehead, Daddy. It looks as though you've got brown insects crawling around all over you. People will think you've got lice." "Be quiet," her father snapped. Just keep your nasty mouth shut. All in the most satisfactory exercise, but it was surely too much to hope that it had taught her father a permanent lesson. So here's Mrs. Wormwood trying to cut the hat off, and then here's him at breakfast with all the leather around his head still. Okay, guys, so that is the end of chapter 3. I'll give you the title of chapter 4. It's called